49ers, a bunch of them, 5 players made the first team All-Pro list, 2 made second team All-Pro, and I think we have maybe 3 different players we can talk about that I've seen some criticism online that they were left off, and we can discuss whether that was rightfully or not. But to start out, do you want to talk about the players that made the first team All-Pro list? Now, this is the Associated Press. I know that they put out like a kind of like a fake one last week that was player voted, which I
Yes,
thought was kind of
NFLPA one.
weird. Yeah. But this one was voted on by the press and by some former coaches and players, but like very specific people. And I feel like the All Pro selections always have a lot more prestige than like the Pro Bowl does nowadays, because I think it's taken a lot more seriously,
I mean, I
the
think
voting.
both of them. Honestly, I think both of them are kind of a little bogus in a way because now the All Pro is voted by like a lot of writers, but they're not necessarily like beat writers. They're not like and the insiders. It's not like, for example, you got guys like Matt Mayoko voting, but then
Oh,
you
I
have
didn't know
guys,
that.
but then you have other fans, and you also have fans who write for a certain, like they could write for a site. You apply for the PFWA, and they could vote for it. Like if they get accepted, they're into that organization, they could vote for it. Now, I'm not saying that their credibility isn't like legit, which is it's good. Like they have credibility, but it's
Wait, can I pause you really quick? We're so derailing, but my dad, I wonder if he's watching and that's why he texted me this. He just now texted me, that's why I turned my phone off. He said, I just made the vanilla cakes and I'm getting ready to make chocolate protein cake now. Just so
see.
upset that I'm not at home right now.
I'm gonna need the recipe for that one.
I know. Okay, back to the all pro selection. Sorry about that. That's so funny.
No, but like there's no, but like there's always gonna be a bias, right? Like with
Yeah.
the NFLPA bowl or NFLPA voting, which is the players voting, they're gonna vote for their friends. And that's why you see guys like George Kittle not make it. You see guys like Travis Kelsey, or that's why you didn't see Antoine Winfield didn't make it. And instead, I believe was it Buda Baker who made it. Like it just like they kind of vote off names of their friends and stuff like that. Same thing with the AP
Associated Press.
section, Associated Press, right? It's people, for example, I could apply for the PFWA, get accepted, and I could vote for it, which is it's totally fine. I'm not like trying to discredit
Yeah.
anyone. I'm not, but I'm just saying like both of them have a knock. Um, so I'm excited because the Niners did have obviously 5 first team All Pros.
Should we name them really
Yeah, go
quickly?
ahead.
It was George Kittle, so he actually did make this one, which I think people assumed he would just based on his statistics this year. He was definitely the best tight end in the league. So George Kittle, Kyle Juszczyk, Christian McCaffrey, Fred Warner, and Fred Warner was the unanimous player. I saw like a little clip of when it was announced, and he was really excited because he's never been unanimous. So all 50 people that voted for Fred Warner. And then Trent Williams obviously deserves that. So that for the first team, it was those 5 players, and then for second team, it was Charvarius Ward and Brandon Ayuk.
Pay the man. Pay the man.
And then
Brandon Ayuk got to
also
get
Brock
paid.
Purdy was left off supposedly by one vote. Like him and Dak Prescott were battling for that second team All Pro.
So before we get to Brock Purdy being snubbed, or if he was snubbed, let's talk about the first team All Pro. We have guys like, I believe this is Kyle Juszczyk's first All Pro because it's the first time fullbacks are on the list. I believe he's a
That's
Pro
weird. I,
Bowler
I wonder why they weren't on there previously.
because they're not human. I don't know. I've always thought the same thing. Is like, why are they not on the like? There, it's a position, but it's been. I
Well, you
believe
would
it's.
think if they were gonna phase them out, you would have thought that they would have been on there previously, and because I feel like teams use less fullbacks
Mhm.
now than they used to.
I
It's kind of weird
agree.
that now they're like, okay, now that we're kicking them out, phasing them out of the league, we're gonna start giving them credit. It's kind of funny.
So the like Kyle Juszczyk, shout out to him. His first Pro Bowl, first All Pro. I believe it's the first time that any fullbacks have been able to like, get the award. This is his first time, or else he would have had a couple of others throughout his time with the 49ers. Christian
Yeah.
McCaffrey, the best running back in the league. What are your thoughts on Christian McCaffrey being the best running back, being the All Pro guy that he is? Um, to me, I'm surprised he wasn't unanimous as well, because he was Was he unanimous?
No, he
No, huh?
wasn't. But that
I'm
is
surprised he
weird.
wasn't.
I agree. I'm very surprised, and I'm so happy that yesterday we were talking about what it means to be like an aggressive manager, and later on maybe we'll talk about or not even maybe, but we'll
No,
talk
no,
about Peters.
he was a unanimous vote.
Oh, he was?
Yeah, yeah,
Oh,
he was
weird. I wonder
unanimous.
why
So
that wasn't. They
at
made the
least
distinction for Fred Warner. David Lombardi. I was reading David Lombardi's tweet, and he like made that distinction for Fred Warner and didn't say anything about Christian McCaffrey. But that makes sense.
so AP senior NFL writer, so the press guy Rob made, he did say that there was three people who made it that were unanimous. Fred Warner, Christian McCaffrey, and Tyreek Hill were the only three unanimous, and that was from the Associated Press All Pro team.
I love that. I absolutely love that. I wonder which one of them, Christian McCaffrey or Tyreek Hill, is going to get Offensive Player of the Year.
I think it's between those two. Like
Yeah,
it's
me
those
too.
are the obvious. Like I mean, I personally think Christian McCaffrey had an overall better year. And I think the only reason why he had an overall better year is because Tyreek Hill got hurt during that Titans game, kind of like was up and down towards the end of like the last couple of games.
Yeah,
But if
that's
not,
fair.
he would have won it. But I think it should go to Christian McCaffrey. Um, but I'm very curious to see how they go. I think he has around 1,900 yards, almost hit 2,000, I believe, all-purpose yards.
Yeah.
Christian McCaffrey, a special talent. Trent Williams still proven to be the best left tackle in the NFL, winning that All Pro nod. Um,
I hope he stays with the 49ers for a little longer. You know what I mean? Not just this year, but next year, um, and then potentially after that. I hope that they give him he stays for enough time that I know, and I know some people say like go out on top, but I hope that they have enough time to like draft someone and then sit them for a year or two to kind of like develop behind him. Because he's still, I feel like in the top of his game. I know age wise he's getting older for football players, but I feel like he maybe has slowed down a little bit, but still at the top of the top, in my opinion.
and this would be the perfect time to draft. The tackle class is deep. You draft someone, you let them get mentored by a guy like Trent Williams. Hopefully, he could be that mentor to a left tackle, the future left tackle of the 49ers, or potentially a
And
right
I think he
tackle.
would be, wasn't it with like Spencer Burford
No, he's good
in
at
his
that.
first offseason? He was like taking him on his jet and stuff, and they were like, you know,
Besties.
he can't like give someone talent, but it sounded like he was at least being a good teammate.
Yeah, he was definitely takes care of the younger guys. Like perfect example, right? But like for him, I think he's close to retirement. Like he's at that point where if he wins a ring, it kind of
Didn't
worries
he
me.
tease that last
Yeah,
offseason?
he did, and I think it's more
Which is
so his
scary.
body was banged up, and it was a tough way to go out. Obviously, no quarterback, so that kind of plays with the kind of situation. Like, does he come back? How's the quarterback situation? Um,
See, I think people assume if they win a Super Bowl, he might retire, but I wonder. I bet he will, and I lean towards this being true, but I do wonder if like they got to the Super Bowl and lost, if there's like a bit of like that defeat, like I cannot go through all of this again type of thing. Where, but then I bet that competitive edge like might come back, and he'd be like, okay, I have to like, that he really wants to win a Super Bowl before he retires. Do you think it's more likely if they win the Super Bowl that he retires, or if they go to the Super Bowl and lose that he kind of like accepts that and would retire? Do you like? I know that's a made up scenario both ways. His
okay,
contract definitely goes a little bit farther, but
I think if Trent if we make it to the Super Bowl, the Niners lose, I think Trent's more likely to retire. If the Niners win the Super Bowl, I think he's more likely to come back.
try to
As an
come back.
NFL player, NBA player, like any professional athlete, if you win a championship, you're trying to come back. You're telling the team, "Hey,
Because
let's run it back.
you're like
Let's
high
run it
on
back."
that.
And I think that's what the Niners would try to do. They would try to bring everyone back that's on the roster. You would see players take a little bit of a pay cut or restructure their contracts to run it back. And I think he would definitely be back if we win the Super Bowl.
Um, I like that perspective. That was kind of what I was kind of trying to talk about, because I feel like I've heard the opposite where it's like, oh, if they win, he's gonna feel like he's accomplished all he needs to. And I'm like, no, like because the excitement, I feel like kind of helps drive you and like pushes you to do it. Where if your body's beat down, you're tired, you're injured, you keep getting to the top of the hill and then getting defeated. Obviously, there's the competitive nature in you that might be like, okay, I got to keep trying until I check this off my list. But there's also some sort of like, I feel like this mental exhaustion that you can only push yourself so much when you're that old, dealing with injuries and stuff. It's just like the sixth year in a row he's dealt with ankle sprains. Like, I don't know how
Absolutely.
he's gonna walk in 5 years. No, knock on wood. I hope he's fine. But he's like had like low key, like they've been like it's a high ankle, but wink wink, it's a low ankle. But and he's had that literally every year for the last since 2020.
He has to know Mr.
um,
Miyagi or something because he recovers fast from high ankle sprains.
Yeah, yeah. I thought that this was an interesting comment. Trent Williams should have won Offensive Player. It sucks that like linemen just don't get the attention that they deserve. Because yeah, he's definitely like you and I were talking about it earlier. Like, oh, it's gonna go to Christian McCaffrey or Tyreek Hill, obviously, and Trent Williams is never going to really be in those discussions just because it seems like unless you're making a mistake, and Trent Williams, to be fair, does get more recognition than a typical lineman does for his good plays. But yeah, they're usually not in that type of conversation. And Bobby V Gaming, we'll get to you when we talk about other players that were maybe left off the list. But I like your comment and I saved it in my mind.
Actually, what's crazy is Kyle Juszczyk just put out a comment. I don't know if it was on Instagram. It looks like it's an Instagram comment, but someone posted it and he said, I complained for years that the AP did not recognize the fullback position on their all pro team. Grateful that they finally made the change and honored to represent the position. That's pretty cool to see because you're going to start seeing a lot
I
more
love that.
fullbacks in the NFL.
Paving the way.
Yeah,
Paving?
paving the way, you're going to
Okay.
see a lot more fullbacks in the NFL because having the fullback allows you to do so many different things. That fullback allows you to run so many different formations. He could line up as a tight end, essentially a slot receiver in the backfield. So he's definitely a player that is changing. I guess the fullback position. It's not necessarily the biggest, the strongest, the slower. Essentially, a running back. They're kind of a weapon in a way, in the way Kyle uses them and stuff like that. So I do like that he is advocating for that fullback position again and bringing it back.
I
The
love
last
that.
the last one we had on the list, um, George Kittle. What was interesting, and I know you were mad. I saw you on
Yeah.
Twitter. You're pretty pissed when the NFLPA, so the Player Association, announced their list. You were like, "Where's George Kittle?" And I was like, "Oh, she mad." And I agreed. Like Travis Kelsey had a down year. You can't
Yeah.
make Travis Kelsey the All Pro, that a first team All Pro, when he's not that player anymore right now. And
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 I
I
felt like
agreed
that
with
was
you.
like I felt like that was a fair because I've heard those like two compared before, and I do think it's maybe around fans that aren't 49er fans, they kind of might roll their eyes a little bit and be like, Travis Kelsey's obviously better. And it's like, okay, maybe his career is better, but this year, George Kittle's actually the better player. So like give him his credit for and I think a lot of credit goes to Brock Purdy too. It's kind of funny, Jimmy was George Kittle's friend and how much he rode for him, for like how much success George is having now that Jimmy is gone. Like he was getting him killed, injured, and out. And well, then we've seen a few hospital balls in that last game for George. But I'm very impressed because there was talk about trading him. Is he on the downside of his career? And it's always cool when players can have like a kind of resurgence.
Mhm.
I think and I like his attitude that he brings to the game. I watched him on his dad does like a more meditation podcast, and he talked a lot about how like because people will talk about how he plays kind of a character, and he talks about how he does that. It's like on purpose. Like he likes to like be able to get into a certain role and then kind of be able to take down his mask. That way he can like calm his body down and sleep and interact with his family. But that he feels like it's important to hype himself up for these games. I don't know. I'm potentially not doing a good job articulating it, but I found the whole episode really interesting that he did with his father. And now I feel like I have a certain appreciation for him. And I really like he's always talked a lot about like the 49er history and how Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch did like put a lot of effort in when he was a rookie into really like instilling that respect within their players. And I think so many players kind of they don't really know, you know, they're a lot younger and they don't have that appreciation for the older generation. And so when I saw things like the F Dallas shirt or whatever, I kind of like I feel like even though maybe that's like considered like a disrespectful like wording, I find it paying homage to the 49ers because he's saying like, yeah, maybe this rivalry like isn't really a rivalry within the recent years because we've always won, but I'm showing appreciation for the fact that this game is a big deal and I am getting more up for this game. And in my opinion, that kind of is like paying respect to history. That
No,
that was my
absolutely.
outlook on that in the
And I
post.
agree with you because I think so. It's funny because I always call I call George Kittle the WWE of the NFL. Like
Yeah.
he's that dude, right? And he reminds me of when we talk about history, Walter Payton, who was a running back for the Bears and everything like that. Super nice, soft spoken guy. So one of the nicest people on probably on earth, right? But the moment he stepped on the field, he turned into like a completely different person, like talking smack, like, and that's not him in person. So what's funny is there's those NFL 30 for 30 on him on
Yeah.
Walter Payton, and like they did like a thing on him, and like the nicest guy, and he's on the field talking smack, and George Kittle reminds me of. And when you look at George Kittle, he does play into that fact. He knows where the camera is. Um,
Yeah.
and what's interesting about him, it's I like that he does that because one, he
He
makes it
like knows
entertaining.
it's a performance. You know
Oh
what I
yeah.
mean? Like he's like these people are here to be entertained. I like that.
And it is true that it's NFL's an entertainment. At the end of the day, it's entertainment. It's his opportunity to make his brand. At the end of the day, you only have a certain amount of years
Like
to make
he's
your brand in
smart,
the
right?
NFL.
Imagine if Debo, like Debo with the talent he did, I think could be equally as like much of a face of the NFL as George Kittle. Like I think George Kittle has some sort of like business savvy to him. We're gonna talk a little bit later about Dre Greenlaw. And obviously, you know, this is all personality types. So I'm not saying
Mhm.
you like if you're not comfortable doing this, don't do this. But I think also just like money, like the amount of sponsorships he gets, the amount of credit, the photos that he's in with the NFL, like he is a face of the league, and part of that is because he's extremely talented. But there's tons of extremely talented players that don't get the credit that they deserve because they're not like and you know maybe it's considered a little fake to be more of like a media darling, but I think you can also look at it if you want to take a more positive spin on it and say that it's actually just really intelligent to kind of put yourself out there like that because you're going to have more opportunity, more money on and off the field. Now, like you were saying, WWE or whatever, George is probably going to have more of an opportunity after football for a career because he's made such a name of himself.
As Marshawn Lynch said, take care of y'all chickens and take care of y'all mentals. George Kittle's taking care of his chicken. He's making sure he get paid, no matter what. That's
Yeah.
for sure. Like that, it's one of those ones where take care of your chicken, take care of your mentals, and I think George Kittle's mastered that. I think you're starting to see Debo Samuel learn that going on to the K
Yeah.
Adams show weekly. That's the
Yeah.
start of it, and that's how it
And
starts.
like,
And
think about that growth. I remember, I think it was the 21 season when he was like popping off. Jennifer Lee Chan like asked him a question in the press conference, and he was like, "I don't want to talk." Like he was like, "It's you wouldn't expect this from Debo because kind of you see his like tenacity on the field, but he was shy." So you're right. Like I think as players get a little older, they start to become a little bit more business savvy, and they're like, "Oh, I should probably actually make a name for myself."
absolutely, and the crazy part is Kittle's the most outgoing player on the Niners, I think, and that's why he's been able to do it. Because if you have another guy like Kittle on the team with you, they probably clash. Like to be honest with
Yeah,
you,
yeah.
like
That's
it's
true.
like you're not
That's
you
true.
can't. There's only room for one of those, and luckily Kittle's that guy. Um, but the last two on the All Pro list, we had two second team All Pros. We had Brandon Ayuk, and we also had Charvarius Ward. Um, what were your thoughts on Brandon Ayuk and Treverius Ward